What is up, guys? Welcome to the episode. Today, I've got a chat between one of my amazing clients, Alaina, and myself, and we're just walking through how we put together the nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress management pieces in a sustainable way into her life. So I think you guys are going to get a lot from this episode just based on her experience and how to integrate this lifestyle stuff in a very maintainable way. So here goes. What wasn't working? Like before we started working together, what wasn't working? And was there a moment where everything just sort of clicked and you're like, okay, I need to make a change here?
The wedding for me was definitely a motivating factor. I knew that on my wedding day, I wanted to physically look a certain way, but also I knew I wanted to feel a certain way, wanted to feel and have these photos to look back on that I was in, great health and I just looked good and I felt amazing. And so that was definitely a big motivator. Another thing though is that I've always been an athletic person and I've always loved movement. And I felt like for the amount that I was working out, I just felt like it wasn't being reflected physically, in my body. Like I just felt like I should be getting more results from this for the amount of time and sort of effort that I was putting in. So I think I was really ready to commit to something. I was ready to try a different method because clearly what I was doing wasn't getting me the results that I wanted. Yeah, so I was ready for a change. I was ready for a different approach.
How much were you working out before we started together? And then how much did that shift, if at all?
I think it was pretty consistent the whole time, honestly. I think the biggest difference is I stopped doing cardio
Yeah, and we focused
other
on
than walking.
steps. Yeah.
Just focused on steps. And you know what? That was something that surprised me so much. Like I really think that we have it drilled into our heads that to achieve these type of results, like you need to be in pain, like you need to suffer, you need to do cardio for an hour every day and be like a sweaty mess. And it was mind-blowing to me that that was not the case. I was like, I can just walk, I can like multitask and like call my grandma and find new music and listen to my favorite podcasts and take time for myself without, being a sweaty mess after. I was like, this is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, and like spend some time outside and de-stress. And it's so true because so many folks think that they got to be on the treadmill, the stairmaster, the whatever, just like sweating bullets in the gym. And it's just not the case when you've got this nutrition and movement piece, well, sleep and stress management too. But the nutrition, movement, and sleep pieces, which you noticed, they handle so much of the stress management up front because when those aren't buttoned up, they are stressors,
Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so interesting, like to take a look at those aspects of my life and, with the weekly check-in questions, realizing, oh yeah, like I had a lot of shitty sleeps this week. No wonder I was having all these crazy cravings and stuff like that, like being able with the check-ins to make that correlation. I was like, it makes sense. I'm super stressed at work and I haven't had any time for myself. Like, no wonder why making these, healthful food decisions have been more difficult.
Right. Yeah. It's like setting ourselves up for success.
Mm-hmm.
And why would you put those pieces together without the reflection in place, right? Because it's so hard to remember. It's like, what did I eat on Tuesday for breakfast of last week? And then how did I sleep on Thursday? It's just hard to, without actually recording that stuff and paying attention, you just don't know. You don't know what's going on.
It's true. And to be honest, at the beginning, there was almost a piece for me where I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of questions about myself. And it felt a little bit like, I don't know, self-indulgent, or like, I was like, I don't know, like, who cares how many hours of sleep I get, or I was like, this is like, it just felt like kind of irrelevant information to me, or like maybe it wasn't worth the time for me to really like dive into those things. But I realized after, I was like, no, this is like the basis of my life. Like these are things that should be looked at, not as like a narcissistic way, but just objectively. Like this is just information.
I'm so glad that you said that. Do you think that that was the hardest aspect at first to get over that hurdle of like maybe the narcissistic piece, but also just thinking, how is this all relevant? Like, how is my sleep, libido, digestion, etc., relevant to, how I can lose fat, for example?
Yeah, totally. I think that, you know, so often people are, well, just from my own experience, people are like, oh my gosh, like, how are you getting these insane results? And when I would reply and say, oh, I'm focusing on my sleep and I'm, aware of my movement and my stress levels and all these different things, people are kind of like, oh, want. And I'm like, they're like, it's
That's not
not
the
some
answer they
magic
wanted.
thing that you're doing. It's not like this one crazy workout or this certain supplement. I'm like, no, it's just like the basics.
Isn't it fascinating to like you have your own business and everybody is aware of it on some level that, there just aren't any shortcuts really in any area of life. But for some reason, when it comes to getting the body that we want, it's like, no, but those principles that apply to every other area of life for some reason don't apply to this one. It's like, well, but I want the supplement of the quick fix. And it's like, no, that doesn't exist, just like it doesn't exist anywhere else.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's just because, in the media, we're fed constantly with marketing. People are just trying to sell products. And I know when I was younger, I was like, oh my God, I bought this thing from an infomercial called the Abtronic. And it was this thing you wore on your waist and it literally like electrocuted you.
So
It
does it
was
make
like,
you contract your abs because it like
yeah,
shocks you? Oh
yeah,
my
like
God.
shocks you. And I was like, this thing's gonna change my life. Like I was so sure. And it was just such a piece of trash. But like
But yeah, like, and I've purchased all like the amount of money that I've spent on supplements when I was younger is outrageous. Like it's crazy. And if I had someone access to somebody that was just telling me like, no, these are the basics, put in the work, it's like, oh, it would have saved me so much time and effort, but it is what it
yeah.
is.
And I mean, that's what I enjoyed so much about the program. And I was surprised by. I was like, oh, this is sort of simpler and easier than I was expecting. Like, you weren't like, oh, you have to go out and spend a bunch of money on supplements or you have to do this certain workout. It was pretty simple, the things that, we needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's straightforward stuff that can be difficult to implement consistently.
Right.
Yeah. So like what was the easiest part? So the hardest part was sort of getting over that, the self-indulgent with the questions and then potentially being like, how is this relevant? What was the easiest part? Like what sort of, you mentioned something that surprised you about the steps, but yeah, like what was like, oh man, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, I think the easiest part was once I figured out sort of like my meal timing and the things that I really loved to eat, I really realized that there wasn't a ton of restrictions. Like once I mapped out the way that I liked to eat, there was no feeling of restriction or that I was hungry or that there was really any foods that were like big no-nos or off limits. Like I was able to make meals of things that I was craving and that I really liked. But
Mhm.
also I'm a huge food person. Like it's pretty much like my top priority in life. So that was really important to me. I didn't want to feel like, you know, you were going to tell me I couldn't have something. Like I love desserts. So I started, using all the resources of things that I could have. And I just like went to town. And even still today, I have like one of my meals is just like a sweet dessert meal because I
That's
love
awesome.
dessert. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how, because a lot of people, a lot of foodies specifically, people that identify as foodies will say, I can't eat healthier, I can't lose fat because I love food too much, which is always an interesting thing. How did you get over that? Like, how did you transcend that mentality of being like, but I love food so much?
So I don't know if you've ever seen the show Iron Chef.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that premise. Like in Iron Chef, they're giving you a certain thing, an ingredient to work around. And so I think that when you're given certain boundaries or parameters, it's almost just an invitation to, be limitless with your creativity. And so I was sort of like, oh, this is like a fun challenge to me,
I
just
love that.
coming up with different things. Yeah. And it's not like anything was really off limits. Like you have butter, like all these like amazing types of fats. Like you can bake, you can do tons of things. Like you can have fruit, and there's, I don't know, it's unlimited. Like I make crumble almost every day, and it's so good with yogurt. And I'm like, this is literally like dessert.
Yeah. Yeah. And then once, did you notice that? I mean, I know most of these answers, but I just want to paint this picture for people so they can get something out of this. Like, did you find that your taste buds were shifting to tasting whole foods? Like maybe you were tasting super over the top, salty, sweet, sugary desserts prior. Like the crumble that you make now is not the same from a calorific standpoint as an apple crumble that you're going to get at the grocery store that's pre-made, for example. So did you find that you were enjoying those modified options just as much as you would have the classic apple crumble from before?
Yeah, I did definitely notice a shift. And then when I would have, for my treat meals, if I was having something, out like a dessert, I would be like, whoa, that's like crazy tasting, like obviously so good. But I don't know, to be honest, I felt like I was achieving a similar sort of taste. The main difference was just sort of the portioning. It
Mm,
wasn't like I was like cutting things out totally. It was more just like the ratios and portions of which I was putting things together.
right, right. Yeah, because you did such a great job of getting creative. And digestion was another thing that we dialed things in, and we were able to focus on, what sat well, what didn't, what bloated you, what didn't. And that was a super cool thing for us to sort of piece together throughout the process.
Yeah, it was. It was so enlightening to kind of get some real conclusions on the things that didn't sit well with me and the things that did. But then also what I found really interesting was that, there were some things that did make me bloated, and I just love them so much. It doesn't even matter. Like it was cool to work with you and figure out that, it's okay if something irritates you and you're willing to kind of live with the consequences, but that's like a trade-off you're not willing to go with. Like that's fine, that's acceptable. Like I have this one certain, sugar substitute, and it doesn't always sit well with me, but I really fucking like it. So
Yeah, and that's a
that's like
beautiful thing, right? Because you're
yeah.
cool. Like now you have the choice. Because before you were like, what's bloating me? I don't know. So you feel sort of powerless, but then we figured it out and you're like, okay, do I feel like dealing with these consequences today or not? Is the food worth, or is the sweetener worth the consequence? Maybe it's yes, maybe it's no. There's no judgment. It's just, what do I want?
Yeah, totally. And I think that that perspective was really like enlightening for me. It was definitely a shift between, identifying things as like being good or being bad. It was more just like information based. And yeah, I thought that was like a cool way to look at things.
Yeah, I do my best to provide the information and that you make the choice that you want to make because it's not my choice to make anyway. But
Mhm.
providing the information and then you can be like, is A worth B to me? And it's just that simple. And then it's like, okay, I get to have a choice here. And you also feel like you have a bunch of say in the process, which you do. You have all of the say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I found that to be a more powerful way to go about things. I just have no interest in telling people what they can and can't eat. It's like, that's your call, but I'm going to show
Yeah.
you exactly how to get what you say that you want. That's,
Yeah.
that's there too. But yeah. So where, like, how are you feeling now? We're post wedding, you still look incredible. Obviously you're like equally as lean, and but is everything pretty much the same as far as day to day goes? Like, how are things looking now?
Yeah. I think that everything is looking pretty similar. And I think that's because, you know, after a few weeks of being on the program, these habits just become so solidified. And that's just like my new baseline. And I'm like, this is how I feel my best. Like, why would I change anything now?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So
And
how, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just saying, and my results, like it's so motivating. There was, I think, a part of me when I started this process, I didn't really think that I could like look like this. Like people are like, how, like, oh my God, you're an athlete, like what kind of stuff, like just asking me these questions. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm not doing anything wild, like, or mind blowing here. But I just am like, oh my God, I never really thought that I could look like this.
I can totally identify with that because I remember when I was at my heaviest, like the thought that I could be as lean as I am now and look the way that I look was like, I had never looked that way. And so it's virtually impossible to imagine, right? It's just a hope
Mhm.
at that point. It's like, I don't even know. Like, you got so lean, we could see your abs. And it's like, you don't even know how your abs look if you haven't been that lean. So it's impossible to imagine.
It's so true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's
Wow.
a funny thing. So how does like just like a normal day look for you? Because you run your own business, you're an amazing photographer, and we'll get to where folks can contact you if they're interested in that. But how does like a normal day look for you now, as far as like you wake up, you go through your morning routine, and so on?
Yeah. So as soon as I wake up, I make a point to dedicate the first 20 minutes to some type of movement. And what I like about that is that doesn't matter how I'm feeling in the morning, I can do 20 minutes. And that was just something that worked for me. And, I'm more of the thought process that I would rather just do like a little bit of something every day and be consistent with it rather than burdening myself with, okay, twice a week, I need to be in the gym for 2 hours or something like that. Like that just doesn't sound appealing to me. And I would probably just avoid it at all costs. So yeah, the first 20 minutes of my day, it's whatever type of movement feels good to me. Um, and then I'll sit down on my computer. Even though I'm a photographer, most of my work is actually just spent sitting on the computer, you
Editing.
know, lots of screen time. Yeah. So I'll sit down, I'll edit for a few hours, and then usually around midday, I'll try and get out for a walk. Um, and what I've been doing with my walks is I make them sort of purpose based. So I like to kind of pretend that I live in Europe or something. So if I need to, I'm like, oh, I need a lemon or an apple for my whatever I'm making later today. I'll just go out and go get just a couple things. But I think that kind of helps me. I like associating a purpose with my walk. So I'll go out, grab a couple things. Or my sister has a dog, I'll take the dog out. So yeah, I just get some steps in, then I'll come back home, um, have a nice big lunch, and then yeah, continue with my editing, and then yeah, have a nice big dinner, and then something sweet after, and that's pretty much my day.
Nice. So no breakfast right now?
Yeah, I'm not a huge breakfast person. I prefer to kind of just get up, get my movement in right away, have some coffee, have some water or tea, get a little work in. And then when I naturally start to feel hungry around noon, that's kind of when I eat.
That's exactly what I do too. The purpose-based walking is huge. Like going out the door for a lot of people to just like, hey, get your steps in, like mindlessly moving without a purpose seems a lot more difficult than being like, I'm going to walk to the coffee shop or I'm going to listen to this, 30-minute podcast while I walk and then I'll come back. Like something, right? Grabbing a lemon, like whatever, taking a dog. Like it helps so much. I think that's an awesome way to go about implementing movement in a much more sustainable way.
Yeah. And another thing is I loved listening to the podcast while I was walking, just because it was sort of reinforcing. I was like, I know I'm doing something so great for my body right now. And to have that reinforcement of, you just talking about whatever the topic would be. But I thought it was such a nice correlation, like to know that I was doing something so good for myself, and also to be having you like reinforce that with, some amazing information that I could apply to my life.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And it's cool too, because you get to sort of get your movement in and then you get to fill your learning bucket. Like it just feels good to learn something. And I think that stuff like that really contributes to a great sleep at night. But that's sort of where all of these awesome habits lend themselves to one another. And it's a bit of a snowball effect. And unfortunately, that can work in the opposite direction as well. But when you set yourself up for success, it just like makes everything else better, like the pillars.
Yeah, totally.
So cool. So where can folks reach you if they want to check you out and your awesome shots and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So I specialize in portrait photography. So that is basically, any type of creative shots, whether it's for a brand or personal use. You can find me on Instagram at I was young and needed the money. It's all one word.
It's the best handle ever.
Right? Everyone's always so confused. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, you heard me right.
Yeah.
Or you can find my website. It's alainamichelle.ca.
Amazing. I'll link to all that stuff in the show notes. And thank you so much for doing this. This is fun.
Awesome. This is super fun. Thanks for having me.
I hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Alaina. So many great takeaways in there. Now, if you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. On Instagram, I'm at N1Fitness. On TikTok, I'm at the N1Fitness. And on YouTube, I am at Marcus Sadu. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform and be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful. Let me know, in fact, if you like this style of episode and we can put some more together. I will catch you on the next one. See ya.